Rev up your engines! If you think cold weather is bad on your health, wait till you see what it can do to your car. Now, you might put a nice warm blanket on yourself in the winter on your bed, but a blanket of snow in your car isn't doing it any good. Now, if it's really cold outside, your antifreeze could even freeze. Water and antifreeze in your car, it's 50% water, 50% antifreeze. It's good to about minus 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, this says it's good to about minus 35. There's minus 37. It's almost touching that. And that's because I have the perfect mixture of 50% water and 50% antifreeze in the Lexus here. That's what you're supposed to put in. So if it gets below 35 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit, then it will start to freeze. And water has this nasty habit, when it freezes, it expands. Most things freeze, they shrink, but not water, it expands. It will crack the engine. So you never want to have it outside if it's below what your coolant can take. And that's why you want to get one of these cheap little testers to test yours. You might not have the right amount in it, and then you'll know how cold it can take the weather when it's sitting outside. Now, of course, there's places that get a lot colder than that. Well, you northern boys, you got heaters. You'll plug your car into the heater. There's heaters that'll heat the radiator coolant, or heaters that'll heat the engine oil, or you park in a heated garage. And speaking about cold and what other bad things it can do, your engine oil can only take so much cold. Now, even below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, engine oil starts to thicken up a little bit. You can see this is about 9 degrees now, so it doesn't flow all that well. Now, engine oil will not actually freeze. It won't even crystallize. What it does is it gets thick, then it doesn't flow right, which is a very bad thing in a car engine. On a cold engine that's been sitting all night, all the oil has drained down into the bottom in the oil pan on the bottom of the engine. So when you start the engine up, the oil pump has to pump the oil up to the top of the engine so it lubricates the camshafts or they'll be damaged. This is where modern synthetic oils come into their best working condition. They flow much better at colder temperatures. Here's some full synthetic oil. Watch how it flows. Notice it flows a lot better than the thick stuff did. Flow is what you want when it's cold. That's why those modern 0W oils that most modern engines use, like 0W16, 0W10, they're so thin, doesn't matter how cold it is outside, they will pump right up and lubricate. And I know this from a fact. When I was a teenager working in my father's Texaco gas station, our oil was outside where the pumps were, locked in a container. We opened it up in the morning, but it sat all night in the cold in Lewiston, New York. And when somebody come in a cold winter day, we'd fill it up and we'd check the oil if it was low. It might have taken 5-10 minutes for one of those cans to glug into the engine and flow because it was so cold. And it's not just synthetic engine oil that's better. They make synthetic power steering fluid, which I've put in this Lexus since moving to Tennessee. They make full synthetic transmission oil, and there is synthetic brake fluid. But brake fluid you don't have to worry about normally because brake fluid is already glycol based and it really doesn't freeze. But realize that brake fluid is hygroscopic. It means it absorbs water vapor. So if you have a buildup of water in your brake system, when it gets below 32 degrees Fahrenheit, that water can freeze and your brakes don't work. So it's another reason that maintenance pays off. If before it was all cold, you had had your brake fluid replaced and bled out, you won't have any water in the system and it can't freeze. And speaking of freezing, with this really cold weather back in my old town, Houston, they've shut the power off for a bunch of people and they start freezing, so they're going in their cars to warm up, which works perfectly fine if you do it correctly. But here's a big warning. Do not do it inside an enclosed garage because your car will put out a lot of heat and do it for quite some time with a full tank of gas. If you got a small little modern 2-liter engine, it's going to use as little as 0.16 gallons per hour just idling running the heat. And even this big old Lexus, it only use about 1/3 of a gallon an hour just sitting there idling, putting out heat. But where your car's blowing heat in your face, it's also blowing something else. It's blowing exhaust gas out the tailpipe. If you decide to heat yourself up in a car inside a garage, with the garage door closed, carbon monoxide and other gases can cause some serious problems to your health breathing it in. So if you're stuck on the beaches of Galveston that are full of snow for some odd reason, that's fine. You're out in the open, like here. But even then, you still want to take another precaution. And that's this. Throw a little snow up in the air. See which way the wind's blowing. In this case, the wind's blowing that way. It's blowing from the backyard to the front yard. So you'll want to point your car facing the backyard, facing into the wind, because then the poisonous gases will be blowing away from your car. So they won't get sucked into the car and you won't breathe them. But if you got a clunker with a lot of exhaust leaks, like this one, find someplace else to sleep. Because I can smell the exhaust gas now just sitting here. You wouldn't want to sleep in a vehicle like this, because you don't want cold weather to knock out either yourself or your vehicle. And last but not least, don't forget your tires. Unlike water, which expands when it gets cold, tires shrink when it gets cold. The rubber will shrink a tiny amount, but mainly the air pressure will go down. As the air inside gets colder, the pressure goes down. The last thing you want when it's icy and snowy out is to be driving a car that has one or more almost flat tires. You need all the traction you can get with your tires. You don't want to have ones that are almost out of air because it's so cold they've shrunk down. So just check them. And don't be surprised if they're 10 or 14 pounds lower than normal, because that'll happen when it gets really cold. Fill them up. Now, vice versa. Let's say it warms up 50, 60 degrees in the next couple of weeks. Then you're going to have to recheck them and probably let a little bit of air out. But when it's cold, you generally got to add quite a bit of air to your tires. So now you know how to keep you and your car nice and safe and warm in this cold weather. I just wish I'd been down in Galveston. I'd do a little cross-country skiing on the beach. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Adonis D4 says, anyone has driven through the Midwest winter have an idea what would be better? I understand all-wheel drive is better to get it going because of more traction. But when there's really snow, I just avoid driving unless it's needed. So I think front-wheel drive is good enough for me. Is that crazy? No, it's not crazy. My mother's 93. She drove for years in Buffalo with a Toyota Corolla that's only front-wheel drive and didn't even put snow tires on it, just the all-season tires. No, if you're not going to go crazy and go out in the middle of storms and stuff, hey, all you need is front-wheel drive. It's best for snow anyways compared to rear-wheel drive because it's more efficient for a vehicle to pull itself than push it. When you push it, they slide more. When you pull it, you get more control. And if you're not going out in crazy ice and snow, front-wheel drive is good enough. Just wait till the snowplow goes through, you know? Yeah, all-wheel drive, of course, is all-wheel drive all the time, and you do have more control. If you drive like a maniac, you'd want that because then you won't slide as much. But still, if you get on ice, you're going to slide. It's still not safe on ice. You have to realize that. Front-wheel drive for most situations is perfectly fine as long as you have good tires on the vehicle. And if you do live in an area where it does snow a lot, you probably will have to put snow tires on if you're going to drive in heavy snow. But front-wheel drive is generally good enough. Josh Pierce says he got an 05 Impala 3.4. Runs fine for 30 minutes to an hour. Then it dies and won't crank. But wait 30 minutes and it'll crank. What's the solution? Well, it's an 05 Impala. That's the solution. Get rid of it and get a Toyota. It won't happen. If it dies and it won't crank, and then 30 minutes later it'll crank and start, odds are you just have a bad alternator. Your battery is charged by the alternator, but it's a lead-acid battery. So just sitting there, it can charge itself a little. And if you can drive a certain period of time and it dies and it won't crank, you've lost power. But just sitting there, the battery can sometimes recuperate enough power to start the car again. Take it to any auto parts store or any good mechanic you know, have the battery load tested and the alternator. You might need one or both because they do work in tandem. Let's say your alternator's not working, but the battery's only got 15% of its power left. Replace the battery and the alternator. They didn't want to think about it for years. Odds are your alternator's going out because otherwise it wouldn't run a certain period of time and then die. That's just because the battery finally runs out of power after half an hour, shuts off, won't start. But like I say, the lead-acid batteries, the lead can eat up with the acid a little bit, create more electricity enough to start it up again. So you probably have a good battery. Do have the alternator load tested. It's probably gone. Pierce Outlook says, I got a 19 Honda Civic Coupe with 30,000 miles. I thought it had a modified exhaust. Later I discovered by accident it was welded straight pipe job. I hear it'll be a problem for emissions. I'd also like to know if the exhaust will have effect on the lifespan. Well, yeah, put a muffler back on it. If the catalytic converter's off, put a catalytic converter. You're breaking federal law if you're in the United States, removing the catalytic converter. And most places have noise restrictions. restrictions. If you were straight piped in Houston, you'd fail the yearly test because it's too loud. Now here in Tennessee, they don't even check them, so you can do whatever you want. If you keep it 10, 20 years and you have no muffler, it will have a tendency of running too lean, and then eventually it can actually damage the pistons by making them run too hot and eventually burn a hole in it. Now, that would take tens, if not hundreds of thousands of miles to do it, but eventually it would cause more wear. So I'd go back to an exhaust and catalytic converter if I were you to make it legal anyway. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.